Halo is definitely a heavy hitter when it comes to first-party titles by Microsoft. While across the board most of the games are pretty great, how do they stack up against each other? Today we decided to put together a tier list ranking every Halo game based on Luke and I's opinions. And before we get into this list, I just want to reiterate that this is completely based off of our opinions, then averaged together into a tier list. Your list could be completely different, and it's a completely subjective list, and we fully understand that. So to be fair, if you're going to sit down and listen to our opinions, we'd also like to hear your opinions, so leave your tier list in the comments down below. To jump into this list, we're going to take a look at Halo Combat Evolved, originally released in 2001, and this game was amazing because it revolutionized first-person shooter games on consoles. It did the dual analog stick, which was a really big deal back then. This game was the full package. It offered a full campaign and an addicting multiplayer that was unfortunately local and LAN only back then because Xbox Live wasn't a thing. What was really cool was the fact that the campaign was completely co-op playable, which was still not a thing so commonplace in gaming yet, and this made the go-to couch co-op game of the early 2000s. Multiplayer was also a huge deal, and it revolutionized LAN parties, which was something really cool when everyone would bring their Xbox over to play with friends and play Halo together. Since we have to compare this game against all of the other Halo games, our only real complaints are just a few things that happen when you are playing through co-op, or when a new section of the map loads, it teleports your player to a couple of feet in front of you just to load everyone into the new section at the same time, and it's a little bit janky at times and can be disorienting. And the vehicle physics are also a little bit weird at times, where you can die by just slightly being tapped into a warthog. Still, this game overall was amazing and is deserving of its spot in the A tier. Moving forward, Halo 2 was the follow-up that was highly anticipated and beloved by fans. Halo 2 made Halo a staple in online gaming and online FPSs. Besides the huge improvements in graphics between Halo 1 and Halo 2, it really seemed like Bungie knew what made Halo successful and just expanded on those elements, giving players so much more to do. New weapons were added to the games, the maps were either brought back if they were popular from the first Halo, or made new maps that were inspired by the maps that were more well-liked from the first Halo. And with the addition of online play, this became one of the first massive online games that people played on consoles and communicated through voice chat and just bonded and made relationships on. The time of Halo 2 was a really surreal time in gaming, and it's something that we really appreciate looking back on now. Besides that, the campaign was really good, just expanding the stakes and the universe of Halo and bringing more elements into play. Introducing the Arbiter and showing some perspectives from the Covenant was really interesting, and they kind of added more depth in the Covenant by having the Prophets. They started adding a ton of little secrets throughout the game, and that just really added a lot of depth into Halo 2. While it is a shame that it looks like they had to cut out one final level that would have had Master Chief in a driving section chasing after the Prophet of Truth, even with the final act of the game not being as great as it could have been, it still was an amazing experience and is deserving of its spot in the S tier for Halo. Halo 3 would be the next game in the Halo franchise, and it once again showed that Bungie took everything that was popular from Halo 1 and Halo 2 and just expanded on it again, giving players more and more freedom. Besides just the graphical improvements, they really tried to use the power of the Xbox 360 to make each campaign level expansive in its own way, and took players to different settings that would kind of fulfill the way that the Halo universe felt and let us experience things that we might not have experienced before. They also paid some clever homages to the previous Halo games along the way. The campaign felt full, and it was a definitive ending to the Halo trilogy, and it felt satisfying. That last level was one of the best final levels in any video game that I've ever played. The multiplayer did change quite a bit between Halo 2 and Halo 3, but for the most part it shoehorned a new community into Halo, and a lot of the community from Halo 2 still accepted Halo 3 for what it was. The level designs were absolutely beautiful in just some of the settings, and that was something that Bungie always took pride in, and they were really fun to play on. Forge was finally introduced to Halo, which let people create their own maps, and that was game-changing in the custom games side of things too. There were just now so many ways to play Halo, and if you had an idea for a game, you could just make it, and that was what really made things interesting, and the large sandbox of new vehicles and new weapons just kept things interesting. Halo 3 is also very deserving of S tier on our list. It seemed like Bungie and Microsoft wanted to kind of ramp up Halo's presence on the Xbox. Halo Wars released in the early 2009, it was a really interesting strategy take on the Halo franchise. First of all, the campaign had some of the most gorgeous graphics that we had ever seen from Halo at that point. If you were a fan of strategy games, it was a pretty fun experience. Our major complaint about this is if you're a fan of Halo but you really didn't like strategy games, this was a pretty large departure from the Halo that everyone kind of knew and loved at this point. It was pretty fun, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't just as easily accessible as the other Halo games had been in the past where just everyone was dying to play it. It truly was a spin-off, and we're going to go ahead and put this one in the B tier. Now, in between the releases of Halo 3 and Halo Reach, Halo 3 ODST showed up, which was really interesting because it was originally going to be a type of DLC for Halo 3 before they fully released it as its own game. We're going to leave out the multiplayer side of things because they just used Halo 3's multiplayer and added it as a second disc, but ODST for once took on the perspective of just a regular soldier who was an orbital drop shock trooper, which was really cool. They built the city of New Mombasa as almost this noir-esque game that just felt interesting to go through and explore. The gameplay mechanics still felt tight as they reused the Halo 3 engine, and the story was really unique. The stakes were really high as it was just more of a matter of survival rather than trying to save the whole universe like you experienced in Halo 3. Our only real complaint coming from Halo 3 ODST is the fact that it was marketed as its own release to an extent, making you pay a pretty large price by 2009 standards to play the game. And while it was nice that it came with every single multiplayer map in the multiplayer side of things, you actually sit down and play through the entire ODST campaign, you realize that it really was just a glorified firefight mode with a storytelling element over it, which was good, but the replay value around ODST might not be as high as some of the other Halo games. It's very much a, you go here, hold out here, go to the next place, hold out here, and then those sections are recreated in the firefight mode, which was really fun on its own. The more you play ODST, the more you realize that it's a lot of just recycled stuff. Even the rookie's story is just going through the areas that the other characters had already been to. On its own, it's amazing that they made a game feel like a full experience while reusing so much, but the more you play it, you realize they reused quite a bit. Still, this game is great, and it's deserving of the B list on this tier. Halo Reach came out next, and if you had any complaints about ODST, they were pretty much overwritten because Halo Reach really felt like the full package. I have to go quick through this because there's just so much that Reach had to offer. Let's just look at it from a quick surface level. It offered a full campaign experience that took place right before the events of Halo 1 and just made the overall scope of the universe feel so much more full, while also kind of having this bittersweet ending, showing the sacrifice of a lot of these characters that you really started to care for. Multiplayer, while it was different and introduced bloom to regular shots, taking away some of the precision that experienced players really like, sure, Halo Reach pivoted, but it pivoted in a way that was still fun on its own, and it was really cool, and the map design was also unique. Halo Reach had some of the best progression systems we've ever seen out of any Halo game, and the armor customization was great. Forge was one of the biggest Forge experiences we've ever had with the introduction of Forge World, and all of a sudden you could build these massive structures like never before, and it was so amazing. This led to custom games being something completely new. Sure, unfortunately some of the awesome custom games from Halo 3 weren't translated as well with Reach, but what Reach did do was introduce players to a new variety of types of games that you could now experience in custom games. They also included firefight mode in Halo Reach as well, which was just an added bonus on top of everything else that this game offered. The game easily deserves its spot in the S tier. We would get a little break after the release of Halo Reach before we would see 343 Industries' first Halo game, and in the meantime we got the release of Halo Spartan Assault on Windows phones as its debut. They made an entire Halo game just on Windows phones to try to leverage people to start using those devices instead of releasing it on a console that most people would experience it on. Honestly, it was a pretty mediocre experience across the board. I don't think anyone was really dying to say that Halo Spartan Assault was their favorite Halo game ever, and it was just an okay game. It later made its way onto other devices, which was kind of nice, but it wasn't like the Halo Wars sequel that everyone wanted. Neither was it an exciting enough Halo game that people actually wanted to play. So yeah, Halo Spartan Assault, it's gonna go all the way down here where it belongs. In 2012, Halo 4 finally released, and there was a lot of hype around this game because Halo was literally iconic. There hadn't really really been a bad main Halo game ever. And then 343 Studios got their hands on it. Okay, there were some great parts of Halo 4. The campaign was really interesting to see the dynamic of Master Chief and Cortana explored, even though it seemed really forced from the beginning and not a gradual character development from where we were in Halo 3. The parts that explored those character dynamics were done relatively well. It was just unfortunate that there was a ton of other unnecessary plot points going on in the campaign. Also, this was the first Halo game that wasn't built from the ground up and just reused Halo Reach's engine. While it definitely looks like a new Halo game, you can really tell that it just was Halo Reach with a really shiny coat of paint thrown on it. In an effort to make Forge seem more appealing and bigger than ever, they took out a ton of features accidentally or intentionally in favor of adding features nobody really asked for. Like, for instance, just one example, they removed the Infection game type, one of the most popular game types in custom games, in favor of adding the Flood mode. But that made it where the Flood couldn't carry weapons, and a ton of games that people loved in custom games were no longer playable in Halo 4. The new lighting features that were so important in Halo 4 made forging harder because you had to wait when you were cycling between editor mode and regular Spartan mode, really killed off the creative custom games community. And the multiplayer, on the other hand, could have been pretty fun, except they were trying to compete with Call of Duty for some reason, and they added creative class mode where you loaded in with different types of loadouts. Also removed a lot of vehicles that were popular from Halo Reach, like the Falcon for example, and just didn't replace it with another UNSC flying vehicle. On its own, it's an okay Halo game. You're not gonna hate your life playing it, and you're gonna have a good time if you sit down and play through the campaign and a little bit of multiplayer, but comparatively it's really nothing special, so we're gonna put this one in the C tier. Then we got Halo Spartan Strike. Because everyone loved Spartan Assault so much, they decided that they could just milk the Halo community a little bit more and make something else that was just apparently supposed to be an improvement, but it was just so unappealing to so many players. We're not going to spend too much time on this one. We're going to throw this one right there in the trash where it belongs, at F tier. And finally, in 2015, we saw the release of Halo 5 Guardians, which did a lot of things right, but also got a lot of things wrong. 343 really did listen to the community and fixed a lot of the gripes that people had with Forge and custom games mode, and really just made an amazing Forge mode, which was a great improvement. And even multiplayer was starting to feel more like a Halo multiplayer again. But where they did some interesting things with the campaigns in Halo 4, Halo 5 kind of just threw that out the window and tried to shoehorn a new character we were supposed to care about in Spartan Locke and kind of put the Master Chief on a back burner. Seriously, you barely even get to play as the Master Chief, and he was promoted as being the main character of the Halo game. He was in all of the commercials and whatnot. It was just really weird how the campaign felt like a spinoff but was branded as a main Halo entry. And the campaign level design wasn't anything too memorable either. It was pretty repetitive and just not really an amazing experience. Felt more chaotic than anything else. Also, ignoring the fact that they just straight up lied in the marketing for the game about what the campaign was going to offer. At the very least, at least Halo 5 had a good multiplayer custom games in Forge. It wasn't nearly as good as Halo 3, Reach, or Halo 2, but the multiplayer was okay to say the least. So since this game was kind of subpar as well, we're gonna put this down at the C tier. Halo Wars 2, on the other hand, isn't a bad Halo game per se. The visuals are really great, and it's really in the same spirit of the strategy type game that went into the first Halo Wars game. The main problem is that this game doesn't feel very accessible for regular fans of Halo, nor does it feel in-depth enough for fans of the strategy type games that Halo Wars 2 kind of falls under. So while this game is not an awful game by any means, it definitely just kind of falls into that C category as far as the grand scheme of Halo games are concerned. Now, we're really optimistic to see what happens with Halo Infinite, and 343 Industries has been getting some good reputation with how they're treating the Master Chief Collection, so maybe finally they'll make a solid Halo game. They've had enough time to do it this time around, and we're optimistic for the future. But do you disagree with our tier list? We'd love to hear what you think. Let us know in the comments down below. Alright guys, that's it for today. For more coverage on this type of content in the glory days of Xbox, be sure to subscribe to Rocket Sloth. We'll see you all next time with a brand new video.